case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barrero's Top 5 at 5.
Well, I knew sooner or later we'd find one hockey chumbalone. Uh-oh. Apparently you missed a two-handed slash prior to this, huh? Go ahead. Knock yourself out. Try to defend about as boneheaded a move and as vicious a move as one can see in a hockey arena. Go ahead. Obviously, even the National Hockey League didn't buy it, and they're nailing him for it. Also conveniently forget this particular player's history. He has lost the benefit of the doubt, 507 guy. So stop trying to defend this crap that, in this case, doesn't help us to sort of enforce a point on the team about how tough we are. It hurts the team. It hurts the team at a very key, critical juncture in the season in which they know they have to live and exist without their best player, Kirill Kaprizov. Anyway.
You're talking about Ryan Hartman, who was suspended last night by the National Hockey League. 10 games for that incident that you just talked about. So he's out tonight against the Boston Bruins, which tips off about an hour from now in Boston.
I wish we just cut him. Seriously, I wish we could cut him. We probably can't do that, though.
It wouldn't do us much good.
No, that's the problem.
We'd lose the money.
Yeah.
He's losing some money, $500,000, because he is suspended without pay. That is a lot of money.
Especially in hockey.
You just remember, I mean, these numbers, we kind of get numb to them.
Right.
That these guys make a lot of money, the fan has learned. But then when you see how much each game they get when it gets prorated, $500,000. I mean, even if you're making $3.5-4 million, that's a lot. That's a lot. But
you smash a guy's head in the ice the way he did it, you deserve the pain.
Speaking of lots of money, the Minnesota Twins have made a move.
Uh-oh.
They have acquired a free agent pitcher. Have you heard about this?
No.
You haven't?
No.
I can't believe this news hasn't gotten to you. Remember Danny Colome? I think we used to call him Colome.
Yeah, we did.
But it's Colome, I guess.
We got him.
We got him. Mm-hmm. 1 year, $3 million contract.
It's too good. It's just so good. They become a cliche. It's almost like, how can we get all the anti-Twins guys going? I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll sign a no-name pitcher for $3 million. That's what they just did. Congratulations. Should change everything.
My favorite part about this today is must have happened after I dropped my kids off at school.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I talked to my kids on the way to school, as one does. And then I turn on the Power Trip immediately after to see, what's going on. Mm-hmm. And this news either broke or they were reacting to it. And John Bonus from Twins Daily was in, and of Gleeman and the Geek was in. And his synopsis of the Colome run, how I'm not going to get it verbatim, but it was, he was with the Twins in 21, actually pitched pretty well. 22 didn't pitch very well. 23, they cut him. Then he was out for a while. Then he actually became a really good reliever. He was injured last year, and now we got him for $3 million. Like, just his synopsis, his summary of the last 5 years of the
deadpan fashion.
It was just so good. Mm-hmm. And as you can imagine, the fellas had about the same reaction as you did to the move. But they do have a left-handed reliever now. And he was cut by the Twins, as I mentioned, in 2022 after a hip injury, had an elbow issue last year. Orioles turned down his $4 million option. And now Colome is back. So if you bought a Danny Colome jersey a few years ago,
you're in business.
Bring it out of the mothballs, baby, because you are in business. We'll talk Wolves here in a second. Gopher basketball is back in action tonight. You'll hear that on Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130. Also a 6 o'clock puck drop. They are in Happy Valley.
Who we got tonight?
Penn State.
Oh, that's right there, right?
There.
Yeah.
Penn State, like the Gophers, 3-8 in the Big Ten.
Something's got to give.
This is one you need tonight, especially after a really disappointing loss to Washington over the weekend. The Nittany Lions have lost 3 in a row. The Gophers have lost 2 in a row. 6 o'clock tip in State College. Do you want to give me the Timberwolves bit? They lost last night. Washington, or I shouldn't say Washington. It just feels like Washington. Sacramento scored on the final 8 possessions of regulation to knock off the Wolves. So the Wolves have lost 2 in a row at home to Washington and Sacramento. They've got the Bulls tomorrow night. But what do we know? What is the theory why the Wolves have, like the Wild, struggled at home?
Well, our guy Mike Conley has suggested a lot of Wolves players with infants at home. First 6-7 months of that is really tough on athletes. You're trying to sleep, and you can't really sleep at home.
I wondered.
You look forward to the road trips because that's the first time you really get to sleep. Now, you can believe that this is axiomatic. There's some truth to it because there is some truth to it.
Of course.
But I would put this under the classification that you don't get near publicly because no one is going to give you much of a break. Any number of the individuals who work in the real world, male, would say, well, guess what? We try to help out where we can. And so a lot of times we're not getting full night's sleep, but we've never really gone to our bosses that this is an explanation for why we're suddenly playing or performing in less than stellar fashion. So it's a no-win, even if it has some truth. And I'm still not sure I'm buying it to the degree that Connolly's laying it out. I'd say no one's going to be receptive to it. No one's going to be warm about it at all. Because you say to yourself, if you're an adult, that's part of what you have to plow through. And it's not fun some days, and they're doing more physical stuff than some of the rest of us. Yep. I mean, how many days in a row are we on the air each week?
You're on 6.
Well, I'm on in a row 5. And so I'm on. Well, yeah, I guess. No,
Sunday.
You're right. If I start Sunday, it's 6.
Let's not confuse ourselves.
It's 6. How many days do I do on Tuesday or Monday? Do I say, well, don't blame me if we stink today? It's a schedule loss. I don't do that. I say, well, no, Monday's the first day of the week, and it doesn't matter what we're against or who we're playing. We still have to come out strong on Monday. Correct? We don't believe in schedule. No one gives us, oh, he was awful that day. Well, it was a schedule loss. He was just on the day before.
Right.
And we're on consecutive days all week.
And how does that theory explain the 2 losses in Portland earlier in the season?
Maybe they brought their babies with.
Was it a family trip?
Might have been a family trip. Yeah, because sometimes they bring another charter with all the family.
Maybe they do, especially if they're going to be in a town for a couple of days. I did worry about it last spring because Ant had just had his baby, his daughter. Rudy, right, had his kid.
That's true.
Like right in the midst of the playoff run. So I did worry about that a little bit, actually. I did worry about that a little bit, but I don't know. I don't know if you can necessarily go with that. And
I mean, as somebody said, that's a new kind of a schedule loss rationale.
Yes.
Is it not?
It is.
Scheduled baby feeding, or whatever the case may be.
And I'll say this. Sauce's lovely wife just had a baby, a month or so ago? Sauce has never been better.
There you go.
And he's here at 4 in the morning.
I think at 4 a.m., you're right.
So and others might disagree. As someone who listens every day, I think Sauce has never been sharper. I tried to get it out.
12-12 we are at home, I think, now.
That sounds right. That's
not a very good home record.
No.
And I think last year, didn't we look it up? I think we lost 13 all year last year.
I want to say it was even like 11 and they haven't been to all good teams either. That's the thing.
No, somebody has pointed out our record against better teams is not horrible.
It's true.
Our record, again, we were much better last year at beating the teams we were supposed to beat. Not only beating them, but thrashing them and frankly, humiliating them. I miss those days of humiliation, don't you?
Yes, and the way I would compare it to last year is, I think I said this a year ago, last year, the Wolves' victory felt inevitable, that they were going to string together a series of 2 or 3 stops. They were going to get the rebound. They were going to make enough plays. Like, they just wore teams down, and then in the fourth quarter played really well. This year, I feel the exact opposite. Like, it felt again last night inevitable that what was going to happen was going to happen, that they weren't going to get the stop, they were going to give up an offensive rebound, or in the moment of truth when they actually have, because Sacramento let them back in a little bit, one last chance, they can't even get the ball inbounded. And they kick it out of bounds and it's Sacramento ball when you're down 3. I'm sitting there by myself.
Yeah, that can't happen.
But I'm watching it and going, I know this is going to end badly. They're hanging around.
Yeah, I never thought they were going to win.
And so last year was the complete opposite feeling after a while, that I just felt like they were going to figure it out and they were just going to walk away from teams in the final 6, 7, 8 minutes. And it's just a complete reverse right now.
30-11 last year. So we've already lost one more game this year than we did the entire season last year. 30-11.
Fan wants to give you a shot to put a grain in your hand with our National Cash Contest. And the final keyword of the evening is check. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword check.
I have 2 on this date in pop cultural history. One involving, I think, your favorite Timberwolves player ever, and the other involving one of the most successful and popular pop music albums of all time. We'll get to those things and prepare for Russo Radio at 5:30. Feb 4, today the 4th, it is, right?
Yes.
2002. Do you remember what happened in Wolves history on that date?
Feb 4, 2002.
Yeah. No reason probably for you to remember this, although it might come back to you once I remind you.
Wally Szczerbiak won the MVP at the rookie-sophomore game.
Pretty close. No, on that date, Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett are both ejected after a verbal exchange with almost 10 minutes remaining in the third quarter. And by the way, the Spurs leading the Wolves 113, I should say by 27 points. Ultimately, they won by 30.
Sorry,
113 to 83. The video is brilliant. In fact, maybe I'll retweet it right now. It's from a Twitter handle called NBA Cobwebs. And it's KG getting right in the grill of Tim Duncan. As you remember, Duncan was the cool customer.
He was.
KG ran hot. There's no question about that.
He still does.
And still does. And ultimately, I think they had great respect for one another. It was a great matchup. But maybe on this night, KG was like, well, we're down 27, 10 minutes to go in the third. What's the point? I might as well, have some fun. Hit the showers. And gets right in Duncan's face. That happened on this date. Also on this date, before you were born, in 1977, Fleetwood Mac released one of the most popular, to this date, record albums in the history of popular music. It was the Rumors album, selling over 10 million copies within a month. I have no idea what that number must be today, total. 10 million copies worldwide within a month. The Rumors album, which had several hits. It was one of those albums where there were very few, if any, you'd say mediocre track. Usually, on the record days, you're going to find a crappy album or two, right? But in this case, there were so many good ones, it's not even funny. Dreams was a big hit. Don't Stop, although that wasn't one of my personal favorites. But it was, as I said, it holds up today. I think it's still selling because we're now in the album period again. But an outstanding album that, as I recall, too, about that time, it was like a lot of the songs were about the breakups happening within the romantic breakups that were happening within the band.
Tough period.
Through a very, very difficult period as well. So I know there's, I think there's probably some of you that remember. You're probably too young. Well, you couldn't have remembered it then.
I was -5.
You were -5 at that point. But let me get the whole track list here. Yeah, Go Your Own Way was on there. I think for my money, the two songs I listen to the most to this day are The Chain and Oh Daddy, which was a Christine McVie, the late great, one of her songs. Brilliant. And the Mick Fleetwood, the percussion on that album was very, very good. So I know there's some of you in the audience old enough to remember it. And even if you're not, you probably have heard of it because, the Fleetwood Mac legacy is pretty significant. And by then, they were more pop. It was more pop music and a little less away from their roots, which was much more bluesy. And there were some Fleetwood Mac purists who preferred that period, the much earlier period. But it was an outstanding record album. I saw a bunch of them again. They're selling again. They're out. Pretty much any store you go to now, there's a record album section again.
I feel kind of left out because I'm not part of the vinyl craze.
I did for a little bit because I thought I was going to, and I went back and got the phonograph a little bit, but I don't actually listen to them very much.
Really?
I will say, yeah. So
I don't know when I would have time to sit down and truly enjoy it.
That's true.
So I feel like that's something where you need to be sitting down, maybe working on something, have it on background. I just don't feel like I have that kind of time.
Yeah.
I'd like to have that kind of time.
Do we get Gaardsy this week? The answer is yes. We'll have him for the prediction segment last time for this year
on the pick segment
on Friday's program. We last week he was off. The week before he was allegedly sick. Although I think we're going to find out there was more to the story having to do with the what was the name of the strip shooters, the strip club that burned down?
Shooters, yeah,
in Elk Mound, which some of you might have even attended. I don't know, or had some knowledge of, and you certainly probably had heard of the story. You mentioned, by the way, snow in the forecast. I think we're supposed to get snow 2 or 3 times more this week. Suddenly, after a very light sprinkling of snow to this winter through the winter period. I don't even think in January we had almost any snow, did we?
Not really. What really bothers me about it, though, is one of the days, Thursday or Friday, must have been Friday, it was about as warm here in Minneapolis as it was where I was in Los Angeles. It was like high 50s, right? Late last week.
Right. Which bugged you.
So that didn't bug me because I want everybody to be warm. I want everybody to have nice weather. And as I pull into the house late Sunday night, coming home from Los Angeles, all the snow had been melted. The driveway looks great. Everything's cool. Go to sleep, wake up, and everything's covered when I wake up. Everything, including my car, because there wasn't room in the garage, because the kids had all their bikes and scooters and everything out in our garage, so I couldn't park.
So then you got to clear the ice and snow off the car to leave again.
Unexpected, wasn't thinking of it. So I said, we just went through this whole period where it's been beautiful weather here, and now the snow dumps on the Twin Cities within 8 hours of my arrival. Didn't seem right.
Todd writes, obviously, hold on. By getting ejected, KG needed to send a message to the Ottawa Senators. Very well played. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Potential of up to 7 inches of snow Friday, Saturday. That's among the reports coming in.
That's tough.
We really haven't had have we had, I think we
named a Snownami.
Did we name one Snownami?
Yeah,
I think that's it.
What did we name it, though?
We did, you're right. I don't remember what it was.
It was, it's not about the Snownami, it's about what the Snownami represents, because Cousins had just been benched.
That's right.
So that was December?
Yeah.
Late November, early December, whenever
New Orleans had more snow than us in January.
Well, they got crushed.
Yeah, that's it. But that's the odd world in which we live. Mark is raving about the bass bridge on the song The Chain that I was talking about earlier. He's right. Brilliant. Yeah, play it. Go home and play it tonight. The Chain. I don't think it was a huge hit. They had, I think, 4 ridiculous hits on the one album. I mean, in all honesty, if you sell within a month 10 million records, do you have to really do anything else? You're probably set for life at that point, because back in those days, you made money with record albums. Not anymore, I don't think, but you did then, didn't you?
That was, I think, a big part of it. Obviously, touring was and remains a big part of it.
Right.
But when you do...
But then, touring, well, I was going to say, touring has always been a big part of it. What's different is now you almost have to tour because you can't make as much money on the songs because of the internet world, the online world in which we live.
As we learned in our corporate meeting, though, today, if people like you, they're going to keep consuming whatever you put out. So Fleetwood Mac probably said, 10 million? Let's keep making records, baby. Because people are going to buy them.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, even Taylor, who, I'm a Swiftie.
Sure.
She puts out like 3 albums a year now, even when she's doing Eras tours. And that's a little hyperbolic, but you get my point.
I do.
She's throwing music out all over the place, and people can't wait for it. They're dying to get the next one. They stay up until midnight to download it. Yeah. And then they listen to it, and it's all over social media the next day because people like it. So, yeah, you could rest on your laurels, and some people do. Say, I'm out, I'm good.
Yeah,
I poured everything I had into this, and now I'm done. Fleetwood Mac could have done that, but they went on to make more records, I assume, right?
They certainly have, that's for sure. That was their best-selling one, I think, period, of pretty much all time. Okay, we've got a lot of hockey to get to. We usually, often Russo Radio joins us late in the week, but given the timeliness of the suspension story that broke, I think, last night, and the fact that the Wild are back in action tonight right here in the Fan, we said, why don't we get Russo today? We got an opening. Louis, who generally joins us on Tuesday, is going to chat with us tomorrow on Wednesday. So we'll come back and get an update from Russo on a lot of things, not just the suspension, but the state of the club. And also, I don't even think, have we talked to him since the Fleury night in Montreal? I don't think we have on the air.
No, because that was Friday.
So I'm willing to go back to that story once again, even though, as you said, it kind of got killed when we got destroyed. What was the final? 6-0? 6-0? Whatever it wasn't good. Outshot like 58-12. Sounds like a bad football score. It sounds like the Vikings in the NFC title game, actually.
Get ready to experience the raw energy of 9 Inch Nails live. They're hitting the road for an electrifying tour you won't want to miss, and you can catch them at the XL Energy Center August 17th for a night of unforgettable music and intense performances. Tickets are on sale now. All the details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar. Final segment of the show wrap, which today includes Russo, brought to you in part by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washers since 1975.
It's the bumper-to-bumper show wrap.
Did you see, by the way, before we say hi to Russo, the New York Post had a story suggesting that before the NBA trade deadline, which is Thursday, I think at 2 p.m. Central, the Golden State Warriors, all they want before the deadline is to acquire the services of Kevin Durant and LeBron James. That's it.
Really?
LeBron and KD. That'd be a hell of a combo platter.
They should be able to make that happen.
Be pretty dramatic. Russo Radio, of course, the National Hockey League draft is further off. I think it's early.
Trade deadline. March.
Trade deadline. Yeah, is early March. So it'll ratchet up as we get closer. Is there anything hot on your platter that you're sniffing out these days on the trade front?
Right now there's literally, I don't see a way that Billy's going to be able to do much. Hartman's injury puts him in a pickle. Suspension, and then obviously Kaprizov's injury, and puts them in LTIR. But they're not accruing any cap space, and he's going to come off LTIR. So this is going to be like a Vegas Tampa situation. So I think, as I told you last week, I think the big thing, Dan, is that we have to see if anybody else is hurt come trade deadline. And that's why he keeps on saying, with the available cap space I have, I'll try to make some moves, because he doesn't know. I mean, the way this season's going, they could have, a season-ending injury by then, and they would be able to use it. But this Hartman suspension puts them in a real tough spot right now. I
want to drill down a little bit more on that story in a minute. But you had, I don't think we've discussed this, but I know you've written about it and you've tweeted about it. What are the ramifications for the Minnesota Wild regarding some of that new salary cap detail that we got?
The big thing is that, I think there's. And by the way, I'm hearing a horrible echo, Justin. I don't know if that's something that could be fixed.
Oh,
well, it might be too loud. Your voice might be coming through your own headphones there.
Okay, there we go.
Everything else is
there we go. All right.
There we go. Maybe that'll fix it. The big thing is the one thing they were hoping is that next year would be $97 million. So while they got great news in 2 years and 3 years from now, next year at 95.5, that actually puts them in a little tighter spot, because not only are they at 95.5, but they're going to be 94.4 because they're going to have a $1.1 million overage on both Faber and Rossi's bonuses that they're going to get, but then they're going to have $833,000 for Parisi and Suter times 2. So suddenly they are down to we're talking $92 million. So it's really not a ton of space that they're getting. Obviously they've got to re-sign Rossi. That's the most important restricted free agent that they've got. And then they've got to make a decision long term on what they can get Kaprizov signed to. Now Kaprizov's cap hit is going to be 104, and so because again they can sign him the extension this year, but it doesn't affect next year. So it's really good news, I think, if you're a Wild fan, if you're the Minnesota Wild, and just the fact that they're going to be able to know that they could comfortably afford Kirill Kaprizov, and now it's just going to be up to him signing on the dotted line.
All right, let's get to the Hartman story. It's interesting because I got yesterday, I kind of ranted on it, and I really I'd say about 95% of the hockey fans who texted were also unhappy with him. Now, I don't know if they expected the suspension to be as many as 10 games, but how do internally, and I know, Garrett is a tough guy and likes some of that, but I hope even he goes, what are you doing, man? You're not making any larger point that is showing other teams that we won't be pushed around. You've actually put ourselves in a very vulnerable position when you make such a stupid, violent move. Above and beyond the move itself, again, because of the lack of flexibility this team has. Does it bug him? Is he going to say anything, or is that just not the way it works in hockey?
I don't know if he's going to say anything publicly, but I can't imagine this doesn't bug him, Dan. I mean, this is, first of all, I think there was a real chance that he was going to try to move him this offseason anyway when his no move becomes a 15-team no trade. I think that he would love to get a little more flexibility, and if you could trade a Ryan Hartman, you'd probably consider it. Now, I just don't see any way that this isn't sort of the last straw here. Whether you, again, work aggressively to try to trade him, maybe you find one of those teams that aren't on his no trade, maybe you explain to him that it's time maybe, and that he actually would waive if they could find a great place for him to play. The other thing is they're going to probably have to retain salary to get rid of him. And then the last option, if they can't trade him, is a buyout. But this can't just keep on happening. This is 4 times since 2023 that he's been suspended. He has gotten, other, multiple fines. I think one big reason why the league really went after him this time is that if you remember last December 31st, January 1, during that whole in the stemming and the repercussions of what happened to Kirill Kaprizov and Brendan Dillon, the next night, Winnipeg comes to town and he cross-checks Cole Perfetti in the teeth right off a face-off. So another little sneaky play.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that the league just let him off the hook with that with just a fine, even though he very easily could have gotten suspended. He claimed accident there as well. And here was another play right off the draw for a shift after he got into it with Stützle. So it just is too obvious that he continues to be somebody that they cannot rein in, that he can't keep himself from going over that edge that Billy wants him to play with, but he just crosses that line too many times. And in this position, he's put them in an unbelievable pickle, not just on the ice where they're, they need him, but now with their cap and their roster flexibility. I mean, he is now one of their 23 men. So right tonight in Boston, if somebody got sick in the afternoon, they would not have an extra forward because of him on the roster. And that is just not acceptable stuff. And so I do think that this, whether he's going to come out and publicly go after him, I don't know, but I definitely think that this is going to be probably something that ticks off Billy to the point that he's going to really look to find a way to cut ties this offseason.
How do we look at I think, in fact, on his major, I think Ottawa scored 3 goals, but regardless, is that the sort of game you do write off and say, well, it's awful, but it happens, or is that letting the team off the hook too easily? How do you process that game?
I think it's both. I mean, there's like John Hines, you could just tell with how short he was with the media the other day, was not happy, and there's no way he was that short with his own team. He was ticked off. But the other thing is, look, the team on this road trip, they had won their first 3 games. They had the big emotional win in Montreal on Marc-Andre Fleury night. And it was 3 and 4, and they go to Ottawa, and they just did not play well. Philip Gustafson did everything in his power to try to keep them in that game, and they just couldn't get it going. And I just think it was just the team that, coming off a big emotional win, having played a lot of hockey lately, I think they were just sapped. And sometimes when you're sapped of energy, if the team scores a couple times early, you're just going to melt down and just not play the rest of the way. And they definitely, it was one of in a season where they've had a ton of clunkers, way too many clunkers, that was one of their worst, and especially their worst on the road. So I expect them to have a bit of a bounce back tonight in Boston. They're getting, obviously, Brodin and Johansson back in the lineup. And we'll see. So I do think, obviously, if tonight goes haywire and they're as bad, then you can't look at it as just a one-off. But right now, I really do look at that as just a game that happens in the schedule sometimes.
Are we, as far as you know, on the proper Kaprizov schedule regarding, that there isn't much indication that they found some stuff they didn't want to? Or is it just too early in this process to come to any, firm conclusions about the timeline?
Well, obviously, you never know until the healing process really gets down to the nitty gritty. But according to Bill Guerin, that everything in the surgery was done, and there was no new news coming out of it. They didn't find any other things that would change the timeline, and that nothing changed following the surgery. So, I'm not saying that after the year he's not going to have some more work done. That is stuff that I sort of keep on hearing. But I do think that when they, did this, whether it was a scope or whatever he had the other night, I have an idea. But whatever surgery that he did have, according to Bill, when they got done, the doctors definitely said that the timeline was the same. So that's good news, at least.
Did you tell? You may have told us this last week. I can't remember, or maybe it was somebody else. That the way this kind of came down was Kaprizov and his people come to the team and say, we got to do this. And the team didn't disagree. The team, I don't think, fired back or countered, but that's sort of what the progression was. Is that true? Is that what you understand?
Yeah, that's the way that I understand it. That's obviously, it's, I wouldn't say it's as confirmed as you'd love to be able to throw that into the Athletic, but it's definitely stuff that I've heard. And I just think at the end of the day, the goal was, after his long return of skating, let's see how it feels for 2 or 3 games. And then come to us and tell us what you're feeling. And I think that Kaprizov in this situation listened to his body and felt like he wasn't playing up to or was incapable with what he's dealing with, playing up to the standard that he feels is acceptable to help this team win. And it just finally became his decision that it's time. We gotta get this fixed. So, and that's what I was kind of hearing during those 3 games, and why I said to you I was really eyeballing him a lot in that Chicago locker room, because it was 3 games. They had this big win, and he looked glum in the locker room, and that's why Monday I was making a bunch of calls and sort of got the impression that he was kind of going to take a little time out here.
That's the Russo instincts, reporting instincts going to work. I do want to talk at least briefly, because I don't think we've talked on air since the Flower game in Montreal. We spent like the full first hour on it the next day, a bunch of other time. You've seen celebrations like this. I have, from certainly back in the day I was writing in other sports, and I really think it's as good as I've seen. All things considered, I thought it was very hard to top. How did you take it all in?
Yeah, that's exactly what I felt too. I've never seen that in a regular season game for a player that never even played for that organization. Granted, he's from the hometown, and I think that especially the people in Quebec, they look a lot at Marty Brodeur, Roberto Luongo, Patrick Waugh, and Marc-Andre Fleury as their own, because they were born and bred there in an era where French Canadian goalies were really dominating the NHL and are 4 of the most successful in league history. And for him to go back there for his final game, Montreal always does it perfectly, and the fans brought it. They absolutely were as classy as you always expect in that building. What I didn't expect was the respect that he was going to get from the opposing team after the game. I have never seen something like that, where the entire other team stays on the ice to shake your hand. Marty St. Louis and his coaching staff stayed on. It was just they were so aware of the moment, and I don't think that we're ever going to have a athlete in hockey again that has that type of impact, where he's just so universally loved by fans, organizations, and his opponents, the way that Marc-Andre Fleury has been throughout his career.
We've talked, Louis and I have talked over the years many times about the difference between great athletic performers and those who are loved. That there is a difference. You can be great and not necessarily loved. Maybe you're viewed as being a little bit more distant, whatever the case may be. But he seems to be the guy who falls into both categories, especially the latter. And I know you've written about this before. I know you've talked about it before. Is it personality, you think?
Yeah.
What is it that seems, in that regard, to set him apart from other great players?
Well, I think that it is personality with him. I think that, it's a small league. And word gets around. And I think that you talk to anybody that's never even played with Marc-Andre Fleury, and they quickly learn from teammates, from players that they know, what kind of genuine the guy this is. And then from getting to know him, like I've known him for, over 20 years, but I've never covered him personally until the last 4. Just getting to know him, everything you see with him is what you get. He is as genuine, as nice a person as there is. He does so much away from the ice that none of us ever get to see, where he just tries his best to make people happy. He's never left that childhood feeling of, one, being a fan of the game, but also just loving the sport. And, he talks about it all the time. Like, he remembers what it was like to be a kid and get, a signed glove from his hero or a picture with his hero. And he talks about that all the time, watching Marty Brodeur sign autographs and just being so excited about watching that that and meeting his heroes. And he's brought that to him. And especially as your career wraps up and you start to realize that, you're not going to have that adulation anymore from the fans, I think it makes you appreciate it a lot more. And so I just think it's, the world of him. I think that his culture, the change that he's brought to Minnesota is going to actually transcend him and last beyond his years here. And the good news is I don't think that Bill Guerin's going to let him get away. Like, when his career is over, I think he's going to have some sort of job waiting for him in the capacity with the Wild. I think he'd love to work in the front office and learn different avenues, and just having him around the team, I think Bill Guerin would really value that.
Is he wavering about retirement again?
No, he's really not. I asked him when we were in Vegas, I said to him that, as we were, because that was another one of those big return stories. I asked him point blank, and he said no chance, that he's not doing that. So he seems to be content with it. He does say now things are starting to go really faster. I think he's content with the way that he's playing this year too.
Sure.
He's been so much better than he was last year.
No doubt.
And they've needed it, because especially, there's been times where Phil's been hurt. There's been times lately where Gus hasn't been as good, and Marc-Andre has been really, really good. So we've seen the best of the Wild this week and the worst of the Wild this week. That's for sure. I mean, with, not to transition this back to Ryan Hartman, but, you asked about his future too. And the one thing he is going to have to learn is that it's becoming very easy for opponents to take him off his game. He's not showing that he's mentally strong. And that game was a game where he was just, totally on edge for the most part. Louis could talk to you more about this tomorrow when you have him on, but the entire second period, every stoppage, every TV timeout, he was in a huge argument with Garrett Rank, who's the referee that called the embellishment and also called the 5-minute major. And so that's another thing, is that, you start getting into it with refs like that, and the ref is just going to be really, really watching you. And he waited for him to make his move. And Brian, unfortunately, put himself and the team in a huge bind here.
We are out at 6 o'clock today for Wild coverage on the Fan in Boston against the Bruins. What do we need to know about the opponent tonight?
Yeah, the Bruins, they've been really up and down, kind of like the Wild lately. They've been up and down all year long, and lately they've dropped some big games. I mean, it's just not the same team that we've seen for a long, long time here, and they're really bordering on the edge of not making the playoffs. There's been even talk this year that maybe this is it for Brad Marchand, that they could maybe even move him at the trade deadline, who's their captain. And so, I think it's going to be a really interesting game for the Wild, because I think that they're going to take the game against Ottawa to heart. They've had a couple days to rest up and get ready for this game, and I just expect a big bounce back in a building that they actually usually play pretty well in.
Last item. Have we ever had a hockey trade quite as seismic as the NBA trade, in that you had two superstars? I mean, one real mega superstar and another player who's a Hall of Famer as well. Usually it's like one side gets that big piece and the other side gets like 6 little pieces. Is anything come to your mind in terms of a hockey trade that's even close to it?
No, I mean, I've covered big superstar trades, Pavel Bure and things like that. I've never seen like this, where just a superstar even before his prime, it feels like, just suddenly out of the blue traded. I mean, I think it was in his Shams that reported, I think everybody at first wondered if he was hacked and was scared to even retweet it. And then you see the reaction. I've never seen a trade where the reaction of all, the entire league, you could see in real time. I mean, just seeing, Steph Curry actually react to this. And I mean, Ant's comments yesterday were absolutely hilarious. So I've never seen anything like it. And it's such a different league. I'm not could you imagine that ever? It can't happen in the NHL because of no trades. Like 60% of the NHL has some sort of no trade protection, where it's nobody in the NBA does. I mean, imagine a world where Luka can't control where he's being traded, but Freddie Gaudreau can. You know what I mean? It's
true.
Two very different leagues, and it's crazy.
Great to catch up as always early in the week on a timely news day for your favorite club. We'll chat next week. Thanks, Russo.
Yep, see you, Dan.
That is Russo Radio joining us, reacting to lots of very timely and unfortunate hockey stuff when it pertains to your favorite team, the Minnesota Wild. They will be taking on the Bruins on the Fan tonight as soon as we wrap things up in the next couple of minutes. He mentioned, did Russo, Louis, Tuesday regular, but had some scheduling issues today. So he'll join us tomorrow, and he'll be able to kind of assess. He's been on this road trip, obviously, doing the TV analysis work, and is in Boston tonight. Kessler's scheduled for tomorrow. There's been a lot of stuff going on nationally that we can catch up on, especially in Washington, D.C., And Gaardsy, can you tell me a little bit about this Best of podcast?
The Best of podcast?
Yeah.
The Best of Dan Barrero?
Tantalizing.
We did it a long time ago.
Right.
We used to do this back in the day where we always podcast the 3.5 hours of the show. Today it's 3 hours, 1, 2, and 3. If you want to listen to all of it, you can. But some people, Dan, don't consume content like that in 2025.
They might not have time to.
Or maybe they say, you know what? I've only got 30 minutes or 45 minutes, or I've only got an hour. What was the best you did today?
Ooh. Now,
when I say the best of, Russo would usually be included in that. But we want to get out of here in a reasonable manner. Let's not go crazy.
That's fair.
And we have Kevin Seifert, who talked about J.J. McCarthy. That's on the Best of podcast. Your rant on the Wolves from about an hour ago. That's on the podcast. And the open of the show, I think, will always be part of the Best of podcast, where you just kind of set the table today.
Nice.
Talking about the power struggle and the dynamics maybe changing in the NBA with the Luka and Anthony Davis trade. So
I like it.
We're going to mix it up. We did it a long time ago.
I appreciate it. That's good.
It's pretty easy to do. So we're gonna keep doing that for a while and see if it gets us anywhere.
So that'll be available shortly after the program as well.
It's actually already posted.
Oh, awesome. In addition to, if you want to go back over any portion of all 3.5 hours, that's there too.
My inspiration, was the meeting we had today, but last night I listened to the Best of Dan Patrick as I was falling asleep because he had Windy on.
Yeah.
And he had both Golics. And you know me, I can never get enough Golics.
No, you wish there was another Golic.
Well, there are. I just wish they would do stuff.
Correct.
But for me, Dan Patrick always has an awesome Super Bowl week. And so I wanted to check in on that. It's always, it's peerless.
Although I'm still bitter we didn't get him.
That was tough.
Super Bowl week when the game was here.
We got Rich Eisen.
We got Eisen. He was good, but we should have been. Patrick was too.
I know.
That was a little too complicated, but that's okay. We got some other good stuff in the hopper as the abyss approaches. A lot more Super Bowl stuff. I'm hoping we get Sean Salisbury this week as well, probably for his final appearance for this football season, to preview Super Bowl number 59, which can be heard on the Fan. I am back for sermons on Sunday, and I'm assuming it'll be a 2-hour tour. Nothing to get in the way of that on Sunday as well.
It sure is.
And prediction segment, we'll wrap that up with Gerby and get caught up on a lot of controversial stuff with him. A lot of people have been clamoring for extra Gerby because he has missed, 2 weeks ago, and then last week we skipped him because there was no game to predict, other than the Pro Bowl flag football game, which I know you loved.
Don't tell me who wins because I had it DVR'd.
I love that. And by the way, Kirk Cousins, real quick, saying he got some arm problems that contributed to his struggles.
Of course he did.
Whether true or not, it sounds like he is maybe rethinking whether he's even going to come back at all. I meant to get to that earlier. No, that could have been part of it.
Tennis elbow.
NHL hockey. That is up next. Your Wild in Boston against the Bruins. We will talk to you tomorrow at 3 o'clock.